What's something a teacher did at school that you're still mad about? When I was in 5th grade and my little sister was in 2nd grade, she wanted to pick some apple blossoms for her teacher. When she presented the little bouquet to her teacher, the teacher flipped out, lectured her for 10 minutes about why she shouldn't go on people's lawns to pick flowers, then threw the blossoms away in front of her. My sister was devastated, and I found her on the playground, crying. The apple blossoms were from our apple tree in our front yard. First and last time I had ever yelled at a teacher. Totally worth the office referral. Some teacher called me a waste of time and space during the end of school performance because I was too shy to sing. I didn't pick a singing role. I was like 10-11 years old. That is 100% the teacher's fault. I was once told I had broken the computer and felt scared using a computer ever since. 17 years married to a very talented software developer and 15 years in a technical role, and I only just have my confidence back. A boy in my class, about 8 years old, had dyslexia. So one time, the teacher gave a dictation. He had spelled all the words wrong and she was really mad at him. Just shouting to him in the middle of the class that he should have tried harder. He didn't do well enough, etc. He was crying, and from that moment on I really hated her. My 2nd grade teacher told me I wouldn't amount to anything and would never graduate high school because I have dyslexia. Jokes on her. I graduated top of my class at my university for both my majors. Homework in 2nd grade was to learn our parents' real names instead of mom and dad. I came in and told the class my mom had a different last name than me. The teacher said no. Her last name is Jutsu like yours and your daddy. That's what happens when you get married. I told her that it was just me and my mom and that my daddy never lived with us. She told the class that meant they needed to pray for me and my mommy because we were going to hell. That was my last day at that school. I went to a high school that had a uniform. We were supposed to have our shirts tucked in at all times. I was walking into English class, between bells, tucking in my shirt because it came up out of my skirt while I was taking my cardigan off. My English teacher stopped me and asked, "Were you just tucking your shirt in?" I told her I was, and she promptly wrote me up for having had my shirt untucked. It was utter bullshit and I lost total respect for her. Little me was obsessed with two things: dinosaurs until I saw Jurassic Park, and space. I was obsessed. In 3rd grade we had an assignment where we had to talk about orbits. I wrote examples like the moon orbits the earth orbits the sun, and the sun orbits the Milky Way. My teacher gave me a D and refused to listen to me that what I had said was true. We didn't have computers in the classroom, so there was no way to look it up. I tried to bring a book with it the next day, but she blew me off. Jokes on her though, because I'm about to get my PhD in astronomy. Edit. I wasn't quite clear in what I wrote. She didn't believe the sun orbiting around the center of the Milky Way. She wasn't anti-Copernican. Primary school teacher asked me what the biggest number possible is. I said numbers go on forever, so there is no biggest number. My dad had told me that fact and it was interesting, so I remembered it. The teacher told me that was stupid and proceeded to grab one of the really cheap school calculators and type in as many 9s as could fit on the display. She then held it up in my face and said, "There. That's the biggest number there is." Double quote. That still annoys me to this day. The teacher got up in the middle of my presentation, took my paper out of my hand, and in front of the entire class told me that I had plagiarized my assignment from the internet. The thing is, we didn't have the internet at that time at my house. I had worked through the entire assignment while talking about my ideas with my dad. It was super embarrassing. Made me feel better to learn that the next day my dad went into class and yelled at the teacher in the staff room in front of all his peers. I didn't have a problem with that teacher after that. In about 1966, when I was 6, our class was making some sort of valentines with multiple folds on which we were supposed to write little Valentine's Day messages. The teacher was wandering between the desks while scanning our projects. At one point I guess I had written on the wrong side of one of the folds. So she stopped at my desk, grabbed my hand and slammed it down forcefully on the desktop. It hurt and was very embarrassing. FCK her. I hope the 54 years she has lived since then have been miserable. Told me that I wasn't worthy of anyone's respect. Broke a kid's phone and lied about it to assistant principals. Yelled at my choir director for playing the piano while there was AP testing going on. When it was her first year at the school and many of her students were present. The list goes on and on. FCK that guy. My 6th grade history teacher would clip his toenails in class. Now I have a foot phobia. My history teacher in 6th grade also used to clip his fingernails in class. Thank good that I didn't have to see his feet like you had. I had a friend in college who really went above and beyond on a programming assignment. She thought of everything. Part of the teacher's test was trying to break the program. Done in class as a presentation thing. The teacher couldn't break it and marked her down for not following the rules. What my friends did was outside the scope of what was required, but nowhere in the rules did say not to. And if anything, should have been given extra points for really digging in and learning more. Shaming me for not knowing how to spell my 12-letter last name. 1st grade. Edit. Peeing my pants because my teacher wouldn't allow me to use the bathroom. 3rd grade. Some of the kids in one of my neighborhood schools were getting bladder infections because the teacher would not let them go to the bathroom. On the last day of school, my homeroom teacher took me out into the hall and told me she thought it was her moral obligation to tell me I'm a horrible person. No specifics. No advice. Just I'm a horrible person. I was never in trouble in school. Always tried my best to be kind. And was even the valedictorian. I spent the rest of the period pretending I wasn't crying because my friends still had a final in the afternoon they were studying for and needed to pass. I was terrible at maths as I'd been moved up to the top class and couldn't keep up. The teacher knew I was a donkey and would always ask me to make sure I'm listening, yet would laugh along with everyone else when I didn't know an answer or would get it wrong. I was the only junior in the class. The rest were jock-type seniors. I was the only one to get a C in the class while the rest got A's. It was ridiculous because the teacher couldn't justify my getting a C. Edit. I had an average of about 91% in high school. And that was my first and only C. This is extra FK'd up because a lot of competitive colleges and universities have a policy that disqualifies students who have even one C on their transcripts. So, this teacher theoretically could have ruined your chances at your dream school because of this. I took a very difficult chemistry class in high school. The kind where only one student gets an A and you work your ass off to get a B. I had maintained a B for most of the year. When I forgot to write my name on a test, teacher was an extreme hard-ass and gave me a 0 for not writing my name, which brought my grade down to an F. To get my grade back up, he allowed me to ask for extra quizzes for the entire class. And every time we'd have the quiz he would announce to the class that it was because of me and they could all thank me. God, the revenge fantasies I had to get him back. I was a child education major at a community college. I wanted to be an elementary teacher like my mom, and one day in English class my teacher was going around doing an icebreaker where everybody stands up and says their major. Well, when I told him mine was elementary education, he asked why. And I said because I love kids, and he replied, well, so did Michael Jackson. Let's just say I dropped out after that. Science teacher was a lazy shitty that didn't even interact with us in any way. She'd write page numbers from a textbook on the whiteboard. And not even talk to us. Until the inspectors came, of course. When she'd have a wonderful interactive lesson planned for us. I was old enough to realize this was bullshit and refused to do any work unless she actually asked us to do so with her own f-king mouth. This went on until she got my parents involved. I told them everything. And they had a chat to the head about her. I don't know if anything came of it. A college professor in 2017. Someone mentioned an African country during discussion. Prof turned to the only black person in our class and said, "Maybe X knows about that?" Double quote. The guy stared at the professor in disbelief and replied, "I'm from Germany." Double quote. I saw this happen at work. One of our managers pointed out that my co-worker was African American. Co-worker responded, "I'm black. My parents came here from Haiti in 1985. Double quote. I have numerous stories from when I was younger of teachers stepping over their boundaries and being just terrible people. It is hard to pick just one. I just remember how it all started with my 6th grade teacher who would routinely put down an autistic student who was struggling with raising her hand and forgetting the answer to a question, telling her that she didn't have to raise her hand every time that she breathed. As a response, I told the principal and my teacher ended up finding out it was me who told on her, so she pulled me out of class and told me, "Don't you ever tell the principal about my teaching methods." To make the story even better, my family knew her mother-in-law and her mother-in-law hated her since she, my teacher, was notorious for throwing tantrums when her husband didn't do what she wanted. Giving me a C on my final exam in maths equals, my grade in maths became C. When I was 2 points from B. Would have gotten the points if my handwriting had been clearer. The teacher couldn't see that my answer was correct and therefore never gave me the points. I notified the teacher of this. But since he only corrects one mistake, that would make the person's grade higher if corrected each semester. He didn't want to fix it. He gladly removed points when he noticed that he shouldn't have given them though. A classmate of mine went from A to B in this manner. Edit. Changed since he only corrects one person's score to only corrects one mistake. For clarity. Added last sentence and fixed some typos. Ignore that I got bullied for 5 years and said I should tell them if it happened again. Similar thing happened to me and the school did basically nothing. They moved one of the bullies to another class but didn't really help at break and lunch. And the other stayed, but he only teased me and didn't mean it maliciously, and I am a very sensitive person and take stuff very literally. But we get along fine now and like to roast each other. Close bracket. My English teacher in high school was the most disorganized person ever. She always had tea laying all over her classroom and never knew where anything was. She lost multiple students' papers all the time. One day she lost my paper and told me I didn't turn it in. And I argued with her that I absolutely did. She wasn't having it. So I got up in the middle of class, said, "This is f***ing bullshit," and walked out. She called my math teacher, as that was my following class, and told me that she found my paper. It was a frustrating victory. Gave me a bad end of year report out of pure spite because she didn't like me and thought me using computers was equivalent to messing around with toys. I quote, "Zerby would rather play with computers than concentrate on schoolwork." Incidentally, I passed her class with high grades and never caused her any trouble. Every other teacher and my headmaster commented on how hard I'd worked all year and how much I'd matured. HMMPH. Joke's on her. I have a career in IT now. That playing with computers worked out. In elementary school, we were doing an assignment that involved coloring. And the teacher said to color something green. I colored it red. And the teacher came over to me and asked why I wasn't paying attention. Because she had clearly stated to color it green. I told her I did color it green. And she paddled me in front on the whole class for it. Turns out I'm colorblind. We had to write a resume in my senior English class. When I listed the places I worked, the teacher docked me 2 points because she said I spelled one of the restaurants wrong by adding an E at the end. I told her that no. I spelled it correctly, it's on the sign, menus, etc. She didn't believe me and refused to give me those 2 points back. I'm still bitter about it. My 8th grade geometry teacher made us use IXL. IXL should not be used. What learning practice program penalizes you for wrong points? It's infuriating to barely get to 90 and then the questions go on hard mode and give you only 1 point but push you back 10-15 for getting it wrong. IXL is not good for anyone who struggles with math. My English teacher senior year called me retarded and said I'd never amount to anything. Now I'm her co-worker and about to be tenured. Looks like we both amounted to the same thing, teach. Comma. In kindergarten we had a bathroom log and the kid before me did not sign this log and put scissors down the toilet which caused it to clog. Since I was the last one on the log, I was blamed for it by the teacher and it was never me. Dumb teacher. Not gonna lie. Thought bathroom log was slang for poop. My sister told me a story about her art teacher who couldn't believe that one of her students who was an athlete was also a vegetarian. Apparently it's impossible to be an athlete without consuming flesh. Also this same teacher supposedly later revealed that she's considering a carnivore diet. And that she plans to not vaccinate her children. I'm mad by proxy. That doesn't even make sense. My favorite, now retired, hockey player isn't just a vegetarian, but a vegan. I should tell him your teacher said it's impossible. Maths teacher would ask if anyone had questions. We would ask a question and she would say I already explained that question, you should have listened. In grade 6 my Spanish teacher called me stupid in front of the whole class because I couldn't roll my R and say read correctly in Spanish. I was so pissed I just got up and left the room and refused to come back for the rest of the period. I took French in high school because of it and actually was really good at French, so Senora thanks for pushing me towards French because it actually worked out really well in my favor. I always notice that it's hard for English speaking people to roll their R's. You shouldn't be ashamed. I guess it's not a thing that comes naturally in English. Speech is weird. Kept me from going into the guys' locker room because I was gay. And said I would make the other boys uncomfortable. Reminds me of a horrible thing I heard. One man was given the death sentence because he was gay. As the jury thought he would have too much fun in prison. I struggled in 9th grade history. He showed my brother my test scores and grades. Sometimes with other students in the room. This was all behind my back and without my permission. My grades are between me and the teacher. Maybe parents. They are not my brother's business and they are most definitely not the business of random kids in my brother's class. I'm now planning to become a teacher and am very passionate about this. My kids' grades will stay between me and them, and parents when necessary. If they want to tell someone, that's their choice. But it definitely will not be me. I was sitting in a desk with a bunch of papers that the last person that used it left behind. One of them fell to the floor. The teacher was sick, so a substitute that looked like a Karen was there that day. I got a disciplinary report because I was throwing paper to classmates. I had a teacher when I was 10 that never let me go to the restroom. Like I would ask and she wouldn't let me. So I ended up having a lot of accidents at school and my parents had to go to the school and talk to her. She still never let me go, so my parents told me to just get up and leave if she didn't let me. Got my period during a Spanish quiz and asked to use the bathroom after I had handed it in. The teacher asked me for my bathroom pass, so I went back to my desk to get it. While I did, she got up and started teaching and ignored me for the rest of the class. Bled through my underwear. Open bracket. During my first year in school, which was 7th grade, I was bullied a lot. One time in class I told the teacher that this group of kids kept picking on me and she called them up front. All the kids lied their asses off and said nothing was happening. She asked a kid that was sitting close to me and she lied also. As a result, I was punished and was made to sit in the front of the class. Was never so embarrassed in my life. One of my friends died of skin cancer when I was in elementary school. I was telling my teacher about how near the end he was on life support but was going to die in a matter of days. They took him off life support to end his suffering. My teacher responded with, "That's euthanasia, which is illegal in the US." Being a dumb elementary school kid, I didn't correct her and just accepted I didn't know how he died. Now I know she was wrong. My 8th grade language arts teacher constantly belittled me and called me stupid because I refused to do any work for him. Ultimately, I had enough and decided to prove to him I wasn't stupid. I read War and Peace and wrote a lengthy analysis for his book report project that went well beyond the scope of his expectations. I worked really hard on it. I proudly handed it to him. He read one paragraph and said, "This isn't your work," and promptly ripped it in half. I walked out of the class and all 5 miles home. That was my last day of middle school. FCKUMR. Clark. Side note. I have been a high school teacher for over 20 years. I was fighting with another kid in a corridor. My Western civilization teacher happened to come along and break up the fight. Later, she told me she was going to deduct 5 points from my overall score in that class for fighting. I tried to argue that a general disciplinary problem shouldn't be punished with a lower grade in a particular class. Her response was, "I take it where it hurts the most." Double quote. You would be very disturbed to know the various scenarios that I fantasized in which I had a chance to throw that line back at her. 32 years later, I'm still a little annoyed that she didn't acknowledge my point. Oh man. Not a teacher but the speech therapist that tried to convince me half my brain didn't work. Which was one of her many horribly insulting lies or mischaracterizations about the nature of my learning disability. Also how she made a point of patronizing me in class in front of all my classmates. I don't know why the school had someone sit in on my classes just for me anyway. It was humiliating. I was a massive target because she made it abundantly clear to everyone there was something wrong with me. Never really made friends because of it either. I had a teacher who once saw me outside of school riding my dirt bike without a helmet on. The next day in class he tells me he saw me riding without a helmet and it was dangerous and I could die. So he gives the entire class their assignment for the period. Then comes to me and says my assignment is to write my own obituary as a graded assignment. I told him that happened out of school and I wasn't going to do it. So I was sent to the principal's office for refusing to do the paper. Jokes on him though cause the principal sided with me. 3rd grade math quiz. For some reason I genuinely thought I heard my teacher say check your work with a calculator once you're done. Big mistake. She saw me using it, grabbed my quiz, and said see class this is why we don't cheat and ripped up my test in front of everyone. I was 8 years old lady chill out.